Hello, hello. Greetings. How are you guys doing tonight? I am here to talk about how to take a handful of reading assessments and then group your students using those assessments quickly so that you can get started into guided reading groups or small group reading instruction as fast as possible. And I hope that this will save you some time in planning and in classroom time, and then you'll see your readers accelerate. That's what we do here at Reading Simplified. Welcome, I'm Marnie Ginsberg, and I'm going to just give you a little presentation on a few easy tests that I'm going to give you for free that can help streamline reading instruction. So if you are here, let me know by saying hi, give me a thumbs up, give me some hearts, and that way more people will find out about this. Our job here at Reading Simplified is to help classroom teachers or homeschool parents streamline reading achievement so that they can streamline reading instruction so that they can save themselves some time, and then to accelerate their students' reading achievement. So we can do both at the same time and not have to create endless activities and doubt what's the next best step for our students. Okay, so let's dive into this topic that I promised. It is called Quick Assessments to Help You Group Students with Ease. So let's see if I can pull it up here. Here we go. So I want to show you this one. I'll hide this. Here we go. How does that look? Let me know if you're popping in and say hi. Actually, I've got two up here on the screen, so I don't need all that. There we go. That's a lot better. This is our topic for the day. So let me move this over here. Quick assessments to help group your students with ease. Okay. And if you're just coming in, let me know where you're coming in from. Say hi. Let me know if you have questions about assessments, or if you have some assessments and you don't know what to do with them, or if you have a whole system, I'd love to hear about that too. Okay, so let's dive into this topic of making grouping our students a little simpler. So the first thing, kind of as a background to this, is that the way that this is simplified for us when we're using the Reading Simplified approach is that we only use, or we don't only, but we choose mainly three core activities called Switch It, Read It, and Sort It. And you can learn about those at that website that's listed there, readingsimplified.com/start-here, /start-here. And so we're not going to talk too much today about those activities. A lot of you have probably heard about Switch It before, at least that. Maybe you've heard about all of them. And but I prefaced everything that I say here with that because the grouping that I'm going to recommend is based on these three core activities. And so if you don't know what these three core activities are and you're just coming to Reading Simplified out of the blue, you may not be able to follow as easily. So just know that I provide teaching about this on that website. And also, if you haven't seen me present about those three core activities in a workshop, I would love for you to join me. If you go to any page on my blog, readingsimplified.com, you can see at the top banner an opportunity to join in a workshop that's coming up. So please keep that in mind if you want to know how to streamline your reading instruction with particular activities that save you a lot of time. So that's a little background. The assessment and the grouping is kind of contingent on knowing that we only have a handful of activities that we can turn to move kids along rapidly. So hopefully that will make some sense to you. And if it's not making sense, you know where to go to find more information. Again, if you're just popping in, let me know where you're from. Let me know if you have any questions about assessment or about grouping kids. So the first thing I want to do is break up the types of groupings into two categories. So I'm going to deal with kindergarten and first grade level readers first, and then I'm going to discuss anyone who's mid first grade and above second. So please think about those two types of readers separately as we go through these slides, okay? So at first, we're going to be talking about those readers who are at the kindergarten or early first grade level. And I mean readers and that level. I don't mean their grade. So for instance, you may have a second grader who's reading at the late kindergarten level. This part of the discussion would be for you. Okay, so what are the 3 tests? Let me move down here so you can see the title. What are those 3 tests that can make your groups more simple? So for most kindergarten and first grade level readers, just use these 2 or 3 tests. You probably will need a letter sound knowledge test. You'll probably need a phoneme segmentation test, and you will benefit from having a nonsense word reading test. And I provide you with all of those in informal ways. In other words, it's not graded or normed based on national standards, but it just gives you a general sense of how students fall. How many of you already have some of these measures that you're required to give or that you already give? So these may be very common to you or something similar. So you don't need to use what I'm providing, but if you have nothing, or if you want to, or if you don't have this information, then I'll be offering that. Okay, so these are the 3 tests that we are going to turn to. And so if you're working with kids who are first grade and up, then you need to think more about these tests, okay? Think about the nonsense word reading test, and particularly also give a standardized one that's normed, so you can compare that student's progress with other students that are their age. Also, I recommend a San Diego Quick Assessment, which is one free measure that you can use to get word identification. In other words, if students are given a list of words that are graded, how do they do reading just that list of words? And that list of words is highly correlated with overall reading achievement. So even though it seems like it's a very low-level subskill, it's very connected to a higher level reading achievement. So don't minimize the power of that measure. And then also to check students' reading rate or their fluency. So those are the 3 tests that you would use for those kiddos who are older. And these kids can be 2nd grade, they can be 5th grade, they can be 8th graders who need to be getting a boost in reading. Okay, so those are the 2 types of communities that we're thinking of, and the 3 types of tests for each of them. So if we were thinking about those early first graders or kindergarten level readers, kids who are reading at that level, this is what I'd recommend. First, I would recommend that you give them a phoneme segmentation test. All right? And that is a test where you call out a word like sit orally, and you ask the students to tell you the sounds that they hear. Can they segment or separate the sounds in the word sit, s, it? So you start at the CVC or 3-sound level, and then you get harder, like a 4-sound word or a CVCC word like fast. Can they hear the sounds in f, a, st? Can they segment each of those? So that is what a phoneme segmentation test is. It doesn't take very long, but you need to be one-on-one with the student to do it. And so I recommend that you don't continue if the student, for instance, can't get any CVC or 3-sound words segmented. I don't recommend that you continue giving that test for the CVCC level. So it can stop pretty early, but everybody can be given this test to check on their phonemic segmentation. Are we good? Let me know if you have any questions. Then I recommend a nonsense word reading test. And this is because many kids of all ages can dupe us with their ability to read. They may have a bajillion high-frequency sight words that they recognize, but they may not have the underlying strong sound symbol decoding skills that they need to be able to progress into the upper grade levels and to read fluently. So the nonsense word reading test nips that in the bud and catches those problems, because if you're reading a word that you've never seen before, you can't be dependent on memorizing it. You have to attack it with a sound-based approach. So this would be a test where you give the students a list of these nonsense words. Again, you can get it at readingsimplified.com/reading-tests. It's a free download. And the students are either correct or incorrect. And if they don't get any of the words right at, say, CVC, then you would stop and not give the CVCC level. So it's kind of the same as the last one. Okay, so that was the second. That's it. That's so the 3 tests. That's it. Each one could probably take about a minute or less. So then you just take these 3 points of data to place students into 2 core activities that are relevant for kindergarten readers or for first grade level readers. All right? So we've got the 3 tests: phonemic segmentation, letter sound knowledge, and nonsense word reading. And now we're going to place, based on that information, we're going to place them into 2 activities. And those 2 activities will form most of our groups for kids who are reading at the kindergarten or early first grade level. Okay? That's it. Let me know if you've got some questions. One little tip is that I recommend that you accelerate readers by moving them up at least 1 level from their assessment data. So for instance, on the phonemic segmentation test, say the students were functioning at the CVC level, don't start them then in your instruction at CVC, move them to the next level, a harder phonemic level, CVCC. And that's one way that we streamline reading instruction. We don't work at what they're good at already, we work at the next level. That's why you're there in the small group setting, to lift them to the next level. So you're kind of trying to aim for that zone of proximal development, that region where they're not able to do things on their own, but they can do it with your support. Okay, so that's a little thing to keep in mind as we think about all of these groups. So this is a big, busy slide, but let me go through it. Let's go back to that phonemic segmentation test and think about how that would relate to these decisions. So if a student places in this range over here on the left, that will help us decide which level on the right to place them. And so we'll place all of our students, and then we'll see, oh, we've got this cluster of students that's at this level of switch it, and this cluster of students that's at this level of switch it, and then that will start to form our groups. So if a student recognizes no letter sounds, or even fewer than 5 letter sounds, then you would start with a variation on switch it, which is called build it. And if you go to readingsimplified.com/start-here, you'll find out a little bit more about build it. But it's basically just like switch it, except we only put 1 word on the board at a time. So the student would build, let's build the word mat, and they just have an M and an A and a T in a scramble order to choose from. That's easier than switch it, where they have to change mat to pat and pat to pot and so forth. Okay, so that's when they don't know very many letter sounds at all. Then you're going to teach them the letter sounds and teach them phonemic awareness. But maybe they know more than 5 letter sounds, which is great, but they can't segment CVC. So on the phonemic segmentation test, if they got the word sun, they couldn't say So if that's the case, there's another reason to do build it. Again, a simpler version of switch it, because they can't segment. So both of those 2 groups of students would start with build it. And if you go to the readingsimplified.com website, you'll be able to download word lists for build it and understand what I'm talking about with column 1 or column 2. Now, say some of your students can segment CVC words, okay? They're able to do that, not the next level, but they can do CVC. So then you would start with a next level up and switch it, CVCC words like help or fast. Or maybe you've got a student or 2 that is a little bit more able, and they can segment CVCC words like fast. They can say fast. They can do that. Then you move them up, and you start with switch it with harder phonemic progression of CCVCC. That's a 5-sound word. And maybe they can already segment 5-sound words, so then you would move them to the really hard CCCVCC words like, come up with one? Like strand, and 6 sounds. And if they can do 6 sounds already, they're really advanced, so you probably want to move them to a similar level, but do nonsense words so you can move quickly through a word list in 2 or 3 minutes and continue to challenge their phonemic manipulation. Okay, so we've gotten that. Basically, we've taken the letter sound knowledge and the phonemic segmentation test, and we have made decisions about where students will go into 2 activities, whether it's a variation on Switch It, Build It, or Switch It itself. So we're starting to make decisions about where kids go. So you would take a kid's score and decide, okay, Switch It, 4 sounds. Good, Brittany, thanks for the thumbs up. Let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so yeah, I just said what I have now on the picture. So we're going to start grouping our kids based on those Switch It word lists. But this is just part of the journey. We're going to do the next thing now. So then we take that nonsense word reading data, and that it helps us group for Read It, another very important core activity for beginning kindergarten and early first grade level readers. So if your student is placed in this range on the nonsense word reading test or on the letter sound knowledge, then you make these decisions. So say the student can't, again, recognize as many as 6 letter sounds, and they're in that 0 to 5 letter sound range. Well, it'll be pretty hard for them to read a new word if they can't, recognize any letter sounds whatsoever. So maybe you want to wait a week and continue to focus on Build It. Okay, so that would be the first group. Then maybe the kids know more than 5 letter sounds. That's great. They can already start doing Read It. They don't have to know the whole alphabet to be able to do Read It. They can look at words with M and O and A and P and T and S and make a lot of different words like mom and mad and, well, not mad, mat and sat and mop and pop and so on. So those kids who know at least 5 letter sounds, they would start with Read It, again, column 1. If you go to readingsimplified.com/start-here, you will find links to get free word lists that will make sense to you. So you would start them at the easiest level of Read It. But maybe you've got kids who can read nonsense words at the CVC or 3-sound level. Then you would start them with Read It at the 4-sound word level. Remember that principle that we talked about earlier? You move them up to a level that's higher than their current level of independence. Thank you, Cheryl. If you guys have any questions or doubts about how these tests might work for you, I would love to hear them. Or if you have tests that you're already using, you want to know how to interpret them. If you have to use them, might as well not use something different, but let me know. Okay, so this is basically the same thing that we had in Switch It. If they're at a certain level, then we move them up to a harder level phonemically. Except you'll notice that at the bottom here, the last 2 rows, I skipped straight out of Read It and into Sort It. And Sort is where kids handle the advanced phonics level, okay? So if they can blend a 5-sound word and Read It, that's great. They probably don't need a lot of Read It practice because Read It actually does the same thing that Sort It does and adds the layer of teaching the advanced phonics, which is like the long vowels and all those other crazy vowel combinations that aren't very reliable like the short vowels are. So that's something that would happen down here at this level. Okay, so we've started to group based on Switch It. We started to group based on Read It. And these will make a great part of what your beginning guided reading lesson will look like for word work. You'll just take Switch It at the certain level and Read It at the certain level, and that'll be a fabulous word work component to your guided reading sessions. You'd also fill it out with reading a new text and rereading old text, but the driver of the instruction is really Switch It and Read It, and then you choose the text based on where they are with their Read It levels. So that's how, that's why we're kind of reducing this grouping exercise down to these two core activities for those kids who are at the early stage of reading. So another way to think about this, to not let yourself get overwhelmed, thank you, Angela, is to place each group along the Reading Simplified Streamline pathway. So what the Streamline pathway is just a one-page view of how any reader becomes fluent, moving from not knowing many letter sounds to knowing advanced phonics like long vowels and becoming fluent. It's really just a 12-step process. So if you took that early on letter sound knowledge test and the switch it and read it, you might have some kids who don't know anything but maybe short A, and maybe they can't segment CVC words. So remember, we would have put them at build it, and they wouldn't even be doing read it yet if they didn't know how to segment a CVC word and they didn't know more than 3 or 4 letter sounds. So they would be at level 1 on the streamline pathway. But maybe you had a group of kids who was able to segment 3 sound words, so they're doing switch it at the CVC level, and they're doing read it at the CVC level, and you know that they know several of these short vowels like short A and short O and short E, but they don't know short U, so you'll do more short U and then add in a lot of the other vowels when you do switch it too, because you want to switch back and forth, sun and fun, to keep them developing their ability to perceive sounds, but also to recognize the letter sound correspondence. So basically, if you look at levels 1 through 4, the emphasis is really on the short vowel knowledge. And we also fold in other consonants and consonant digraphs early then. So some kids will be at doing read it and switch it with an emphasis on maybe level 2. Other kids may be doing those same activities with 3 sounds or 4 sounds, but maybe they would be at level 4. And then remember that last group we talked about was doing really well with switch it at the 4 or 5 sound level. They would already, and they probably know their short vowels, so they don't need to camp out here, right? So they would move into the advanced phonics level, and they would start right here at level 5. So they would be doing sort it with the O sound, and they would be doing switch it that would be advanced, like CC, VCC, or above, and maybe even nonsense words. So basically, you take the letter sound knowledge, the phonemic awareness, phonemic segmentation, and the nonsense word reading to place kids into 2 main activities, mostly switch it or read it. And then you group those children who are similarly able into clusters, and then you put those clusters at each of the level on the streamline pathway. And so you work on, for group 1, say you would work on level 1, maybe for a week, maybe 2 weeks if you're in kindergarten. But then you would be moving to level 2 in a week or in a day or in 2 weeks, depending on how quickly they were picking it up. But you want to move quickly up the levels, because each level that goes up gives them a little challenge, keeps them sharp, but they're still practicing what they had before. All right, so that is basically how to think about all of those early guys, the kids who are beginners. But what about everybody else? Maybe even in your kindergarten classroom, you have kids who are reading at the mid-first grade level and above. Or maybe in your second grade classroom, you have kids who are at the mid-first grade level and above. So this section, to wrap up what today's topic, will relate to all the older kids. And this even applies, frankly, to 7th graders and high schoolers. It's the same kind of system that I use when I'm tutoring kids of all ages who need a boost. So what are those 3 tests? These are the 3 tests that we reviewed earlier that those mid-first grade and up readers need. A nonsense word reading test, and particularly one that's standardized or normed so that you know how they compare with their peers. And I'm going to show you a link to get one for free. And then you need a word identification test. And again, I'm providing a link to get a free version of that. That's called the San Diego Quick Assessment if you don't have something that's normed or, comparing your student with other students in a larger sample. And then reading rate or fluency that relates to the word identification above. In other words, once you figure out the student's word identification level, like say they're able to read 2nd grade level words, then I want to give them a 2nd grade level passage to check their reading rate. So if they're a 4th grader reading 2nd grader level words, like their word ID is 2nd grade, I don't want to give them a 4th grade passage to check their reading rate. I want to give them a reading rate passage that's at their word identification level. Thank you for the thumbs up, you guys. So here's a nonsense word test. Here's a place where you can get it for free. Okay, there's one that is just an informal one that I've provided. But also on that same site is a standardized norm test that I'm linking to. So I think both can be helpful because one will give you comparisons very clearly based on the 4 sounds, 5 sounds, 6 sounds, and so on. And the other one will give you that comparison with peers. And then you would also want to give a word identification test. Again, I'm linking to a free one that you can give. And these words just get progressively harder so you can see what level your student is able to read. And then based on their word identification, you choose a graded passage to give students something short to read aloud, and you time them. And you want to see how many words they read correctly in 1 minute, and then you can compare that to national norms. And again, I have a link there at that website, readingsimplified.com/reading-tests for how to compare a student with their international, or rather national norms. And those norms are based on the US, but I don't think they would vary hugely in other English-speaking countries. So that's going to give you a good background knowledge, but now we want to start moving closer to grouping. So you do the same thing with these older kids that we did with the younger kids, or I shouldn't say older and younger, more advanced readers and less advanced readers. You take that nonsense word reading test, which again is helpful because it really zeroes into whether or not they're using a sound symbol matching approach or sound-based decoding approach, or they're just memorizing based on the beginning letter sound, or maybe parts of the letter sounds in the word, but not really a full left to right blending of the word's properties. So that's why the nonsense word test is so important. So maybe they're able just to blend and read a CVC or a 3-sound word. Then you would start with switch it. Where would we start? Guys, some of you who are still here, who've been here all along, I should say, you're pros, you know we got to move them up, right? If they're at CVC, we don't teach them at the CVC level. We teach them at the next level up, maybe even 2 levels up. And similarly, look here, we've got 4 sound words. If they're able to do that, but not 5 sound, then we start them with 5 sound switch it. If they're able to do 5 sound switch it, but not 6 sound switch it, then we start them with 6 sound switch it. And then finally, if they're just able to read a CCC, VCC word, which is even hard for me to say, it would be hard to read. If they can do that, then they just need to go into the similar level, or like CCVCC or CCCVCC, but at nonsense words, so that they can quickly move between words, and also they really develop their phonemic manipulation and phonemic segmentation that way. So that is how we start to place kids for switch it. And then we just group for sort it. Again, these kids are probably able to do read it, and so we move to the next level of sort it, and this is what we do. Basically, anyone who is not super fluent and not far above their grade level would benefit from going through the sort it activities and our sort it mindset as we approach decodable text. So those students, if they can read CVC nonsense words, for the most part, maybe they're not perfect, but they can do it some of the time, then you would begin sort it with them. Students who read at higher grade levels can use harder word lists. So everybody can do sort it if they fall into this category. Some kids may get words like for the O sound for sort it, like go and show, and other kids may get harder level words that are 2 sound that have the O sound. So that's just how you vary the difficulty, but you keep the same activity. And that's one reason that it's helpful to get that grade. Another reason it's helpful to get that graded word identification knowledge, so that okay, they're actually doing, they're pretty much like on grade level. If they're in the 2nd grade, then I know they know hundreds of high-frequency sight words. I don't need to worry about giving them the word go and show. I'll give them the harder word lists. So that's grouping. And then you do the same thing that we did for the younger kids or the younger readers. You group them based on the streamline pathway. And this is a 1st grade pathway, and this is pretty similar to what every kid will get 1st grade and above. Notice down here in level 1, unlike the kindergarten pathway, we don't have 4 levels for learning all the consonants and all the consonant digraphs and all the short vowels. Rather, all of that is collapsed into 1 level. So you review that stuff pick a switch it level that's applicable for those students, but you move quickly, if not immediately, at the beginning of the year into advanced phonics and start with sort it. So some kids will be doing switch it with 5 sound words and sort it with fairly easy words like go and show. Other kids will be doing switch it with maybe 3 or 4 sound words and sort it with even easier words. And so then everybody is given a more and more difficult level of switch it, and they're doing the same O sound because you're probably going to start them at the same place so that you can get them all through the streamlined pathway, learning the basic phonics information that they need to be able to infer more and more words themselves. And so some kids are going to be at level 1, and some kids will be at level 2. And some of those kids at level 2 will be doing easy O words, and some of those kids at level 2 will be doing hard O words. Some of those kids at level 2 will be doing easy O text. Some of them will be doing hard O text. And so one group may move within 2 or 3 days to level 3 if they're just flying through this. But another group may take a whole week to do the O sound. So then you start to stagger your groups, and they're shifting and their progression up the streamlined pathway. But I think that encompasses the gist of what I wanted to share with you today, that there is basically only a few tests that you need to be able to get general grouping started at the beginning of the year. Assuming you know that there's only a handful of activities that it takes to move kids along to become good readers. And if you don't know about those activities that I've been discussing about, please go here to this website, readingsimplified.com/start-here, to find out about these 3 activities: switch it, read it, and sort it. Some kids will be here, and you'll need these. Some kids will benefit from these tests, and then kids who are more advanced will benefit from these. Sorry, just lost myself here. My Facebook Live screen is tricking me. These are the ones that I wanted to say. So that was really sophisticated and advanced stuff. It's advanced to learn if you don't know the 3 activities or you don't know the handful of assessments. But if you get your head wrapped around it, then it saves you a ton of time, because you can quickly see how everybody falls pretty much somewhere on the streamlined pathway, unless they're advanced and reading well above grade level and highly fluent. And that's how you can group kids into clusters so that you can meet their needs with switch it, read it, and sort it at a certain level. And then you can pick up another group right after that, use the same activities, but have slightly different reading levels. So that is how you can group quickly with a handful of assessments. Check out the links that we've mentioned today so that you can start to think about this. It may be that we need to continue this conversation. So email me or write some comments in this Facebook post so that I don't leave you hanging, because I want this to not overwhelm, because my mission is to streamline. But I know at the big back to school, it's so daunting to try to do all that we have to do. So I wanted to give you at least a vision, if you don't do it immediately, if you do it next week and then the week after, thinking about how you can take your kids and fairly quickly figure out who needs to be where. And if you don't have this information, maybe you have other information from a previous year so you can quickly sort people. And then as you work with them, you'll learn more about, well, this student can handle switch it at the 5 sound level, and the rest of the group is only handling it at the 3 or 4 sound. So maybe I'll move this student over there. But at least knowing where kids are generally will help you figure out how to group and to get yourself started. So thanks for being here, and please let me know what questions you have, and let me know if you have an assessment system that helps you group. All right? That's it for Back to School Boot Camp. We've had 4 weeks, and if you missed the other weeks, check our blog, readingsimplified.com, to find out the other tips that I've given out about how to make reading instruction easier for getting back into the school year. Take care.